Welcome to My Irish Radio, music and culture news, your connection to everything happening in the world of Irish music and culture. I'm Jamie Flanagan. Each episode will share the latest news from Ireland's vibrant music scene, from traditional and folk to rebel ballads, pub tunes, Celtic rock, and today's top Irish pop. We'll also bring you updates on festivals, cultural events, and people keeping Irish heritage alive around the world. And remember, My Irish Radio is more than just a station. It's your community, your soundtrack, your voice. You can listen 24/7 at myirishradio.com and through the links in the podcast description below. Here's the best part. You can be part of it. Host your very own show on My Irish Radio. Choose your playlist, share your stories, make My Irish Radio your Irish Radio. Let's get into what's happening this week in Irish music and culture.
So picture this. You're standing in the mud of a construction site right in the middle of Dublin, and archaeologists suddenly pull up a Roman pot.
Which is just wild when you think about it.
Right. I mean, it's a piece of pottery that, historically speaking, it really shouldn't exist there.
Yeah. Not
Considering, the bounds of the Roman Empire and literally everything we thought we knew about Hiberno-Roman trade lines, it's a glitch in the matrix. And then at the exact same time, a punk rap group from Belfast is totally topping the charts with this aggressively modern album.
Yeah, performed entirely in the Irish language, actually.
Exactly. A language that, let's be honest, traditionalists have been eulogizing for like a century now. Today's mission is to unpack this really fascinating snapshot of Irish arts, culture, and heritage. We're looking at sources from early May 2026, and we've got a huge stack of material today.
We really do. It covers everything.
Yeah, from international arts funding and festival lineups to some pretty intense cultural controversies, actually.
It's a remarkable cross-section, honestly. When you put all these pieces together, you get a very, very clear picture of a society in motion.
And that is exactly what we want to capture for you listening today.
Okay.
Because if you want to understand the true pulse of a society, you don't just look at its parliamentary debates or its GDP.
Right. That only tells half the story.
Exactly. You look at what its artists are doing, you look at what its government is heavily funding, and crucially, what its people are aggressively arguing about.
Yeah, the friction points.
Yes, the friction points. The goal of this deep dive is to understand the dynamic tension in modern Ireland right now. It's this nation that is fiercely holding on to its deep historical roots, while at the same time...
While aggressively pushing forward.
Right, pushing into this globalized, hyper-modern, and honestly, sometimes highly controversial present.
Because the arts, they aren't just entertainment. I think people forget that. They're the laboratory where a culture actually figures out its own identity, like in real time.
Okay, let's unpack this by starting right in that laboratory. So looking at the music scene in our sources, it strikes me that traditional Irish music, it isn't just a museum piece, right? It's not trapped in amber.
No, not at all.
It's more like open source code.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Right. Because the instruments, the lyrical themes, the rhythmic structures, that's the underlying architecture. And new generations are just constantly, pushing new commits to the repository.
Yeah, rewriting the software.
Updating it to reflect the world they actually live in today.
And what's fascinating here is how deliberate that rewriting process has become. I mean, May 2026 is giving us an absolute masterclass in how that cultural code is manipulated. Just look at the Belfast Tradfest.
Oh, right. They just announced their late summer lineup.
They did, and they're bringing the legendary group Solas back to Belfast for the first time in nearly 20 years.
Wow. 20 years.
Yeah. Alongside the Michael McGoldrick Big Band.
But help me understand the timeline of this evolution, though. Because you have Solas returning, and they were, the massive disruptors of the genre back in the 90s.
Exactly. They completely changed the game.
But then you look at the new releases happening right now, like the hip-hop trio Kneecap just dropped their new album, and it is unapologetically titled Fenian.
Such a bold title.
And it features a track called Irish Goodbye with the English spoken word artist K Tempest. So how do we get from Solas to Kneecap existing in the exact same cultural ecosystem?
Well, it's the perfect illustration of your open source metaphor, actually, because Solas, they updated the code by bringing in these transatlantic influences, right? And this driving, almost rhythmic ferocity to acoustic instruments.
I made it mass.
They proved trad could fill arenas. So Kneecap takes that foundation and they take the very language itself, which, let's face it, was often treated as this fragile heritage artifact, and they weaponize it.
Wow, yeah. Weaponize it.
They use the Irish language over heavy, punk-infused hip-hop beats to tell these modern, really gritty urban stories about disenfranchisement, and then collaborating with Kay Tempest, who is a major UK artist, on an album with a politically charged title like Fenian.
It's a huge statement.
It is an incredible display of cultural confidence. They aren't asking for permission to participate in modern music. They're demanding the modern music world adapt to them.
And that confidence, it's clearly contagious. Across the board, in our sources, artists are using these traditional foundations to comment directly on the now.
Oh, absolutely.
Like you've got the folk rock group Someone's Sons. They just released their debut EP, and it's called The Boom Is Back.
Right, which is just dripping with sarcasm.
Completely. That title alone is this heavy, sarcastic commentary on modern Irish economic anxiety and the housing crisis, but it's all wrapped up in folk rock instrumentation.
Exactly. The medium is traditional, but the message is so immediate, and you see this everywhere. The indie folk duo Evelyn and Dakian, they just put out their sophomore album, Wait Up.
I saw that in the briefs, yeah.
And that leans heavily into very intimate, hyper-local storytelling. Then you have the Kates, who just released a new single, Between Truths. They're building hype for a debut album this October. They are all pulling from the exact same well, but filtering it through very different modern anxieties.
We're also seeing this genre blending being pushed onto the most prestigious stages in the country, too. The Tradition Now initiative is spinning a Harry on.
Oh, they are wild live.
Right, they do this almost chaotic alternative folk music, and they're bringing them straight into the National Concert Hall in Dublin.
Yeah, right into the establishment.
They're literally taking the alternative and placing it squarely on the national stage. It forces the establishment to recognize it as part of the canon.
And you really have to consider the infrastructure supporting all of this. Over at the Guinness Storehouse, the IMRO Live Music Awards are currently celebrating the venues and professionals keeping this massive ecosystem alive.
And it's not just Dublin either.
No, not at all. You have Patrick Rafter performing Vivaldi with the Luminosa Orchestra out in Galway and Kilkenny. And then the Cork Fringe Festival is hosting stalwarts like John Spillane right alongside newer acts like Eilgan Collins. The regional infrastructure is thriving just as much as the capital.
But the infrastructure is also changing structurally, isn't it? Our sources highlight this new book out by Joanne Cusack called Women in Irish Traditional Music.
Yes, a really important piece of work.
And it specifically explores the experiences of women in the commercial sector of the genre. Now, wait, I want to push back on this a bit.
Sure.
If the commercial sector of trads, the booking agents, the festival organizers, the label executives, if it was historically so male-dominated, how did female-fronted groups or significant female instrumentalists, like the women in Solas, for instance, break through so prominently in the first place?
That's a really great question, and it's the exact nuance Cusack's book addresses. It's the difference between visibility on stage and actual power in the boardroom. Historically, women have always been absolutely central to the playing and the transmission of traditional music, in homes and local pub sessions. But as the music industrialized...
As it became a business.
Right, as it became a lucrative global touring commodity in the late 20th century, the gatekeeping roles solidified around male networks.
Yeah.
The people deciding who gets funded, who headlines, who gets the major record deals.
So they were on stage, but they weren't signing the checks.
Exactly. And Cusack is pointing out that what we're seeing right now in 2026 is women dismantling those structural barriers behind the scenes. They're ensuring the commercial reality actually reflects the diversity of the performers. They are taking ownership of the architecture itself.
So they're rewriting the code domestically and fixing the bugs in the industry behind it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
But they certainly aren't keeping it to themselves. Which brings us to a really fascinating transition in our sources. Ireland is aggressively curating how this new cultural code is deployed abroad.
Very aggressive.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
You're listening to My Irish Music and Culture News, brought to you by My Irish Radio, streaming the best in Irish and Celtic music all day, every day. From classic jigs and reels to the latest Irish rock and pub favorites, we celebrate the sound of Ireland worldwide. Want to be more than a listener? Be a host. Share your love for the Irish music by hosting your own show on My Irish Radio. It's easy to get started. Just send us an email, myirishradio@gmail.com. Don't forget, you can listen 24/7 at myirishradio.com. Make My Irish Radio your Irish Radio.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Culture Ireland just announced over 1.6 million euros in state funding to support 192 international projects across music, theater, and dance.
The sheer scale of that state intervention is just striking.
Right. So I have to ask you, we have 1.6 million euros funding nearly 200 projects globally. We have legacy acts like U2 currently in deep discussions about a surprise release featuring a Ukrainian collaborator.
Right.
What is the state's actual return on investment here?
That's the big question.
Is this just some sort of vanity project, or is Ireland essentially using the arts as its primary form of soft power diplomacy on the world stage?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the geopolitical utility is just undeniable. Think about the mechanics of soft power.
No.
For a small island nation that doesn't have a massive military or, sprawling empire of hard resources, influence is your primary currency.
Right, you have to be persuasive.
Exactly. So the ROI on that 1.6 million euros isn't just ticket sales. It's international goodwill. It's tourism. It's foreign direct investment. And getting a seat at the table in major global policy discussions, Ireland has realized that its most renewable, high-yield export is its culture.
So it's essentially exporting narrative.
Exactly. Look at the data points from May 2026. 10 different Irish individuals made the Forbes 30 under 30 list.
Wow, 10.
10. That broadcasts an image of a hyper-innovative, youthful, tech and culture-savvy nation straight to global financial markets. And then look at the visual arts. The Ireland at Venice exhibition, which is arguably the most prestigious contemporary art platform in the world, they are actively seeking a new public program curator right now.
And why is that significant?
Because the state wants a visionary to strictly manage and dictate the narrative of Irish art to the global elite who attend the Biennale. They are tightly controlling the export.
But the beauty of this cultural ecosystem is that it forces a two-way street.
Right.
They aren't just broadcasting outwards, they're pulling global influence inward.
Very.
The sources mentioned the American jazz guitarist Mary Halverson touring Ireland right now, and she's explicitly blending folk and metal styles with her jazz roots.
Right.
You have this constant cross-pollination happening on Irish soil.
Which enriches the domestic code even further. And regarding U2 collaborating with a Ukrainian artist, that is soft power deployed with surgical precision.
Because they've always been political.
Yeah, U2 has essentially functioned as an unofficial diplomatic wing of the Irish state for decades. So by structurally aligning Irish arts with one of the most critical geopolitical conversations of the decade, the defense of Ukraine, they're signaling Ireland's global values through music rather than just relying on, dry parliamentary declarations.
That makes a lot of sense. And we see that same footprint in film, too. The brief mentions the continued massive global impact of Irish cinema, even noting that recent legal disputes related to the film It Ends With Us are finally settling. The sheer ubiquity of Irish artists globally, it isn't an accident.
No, it's heavily engineered.
They're saturating the market to punch far above their actual weight class in terms of population.
They are curating this perfect, modern, globally relevant image.
Yes, but here's the paradox. They are meticulously curating this global image of a modern, forward-thinking tech and arts hub. But the ground beneath their feet isn't cooperating.
No, it is not.
The earth literally spits up the past when they least expect it. Which takes us back to that Dublin construction site we started with.
Right, the Roman pot.
Exactly. So what does this all mean? Finding a Roman pot right in the mud of Dublin disrupts everything we thought we knew about ancient trade. We always assume the map of history is permanently inked,
We like to think it's settled.
Right. We know the Romans conquered Britain. We know they never conquered Ireland. So finding this domestic artifact forces us to ask all these new questions. Were there established mercantile networks bypassing military conquest?
Were Roman merchants living in early Dublin?
Exactly. A single piece of pottery shifts the boundaries of historical reality.
And this raises an important question about how societies interact with their heritage. Because heritage isn't a fixed map, it is constantly being redrawn. And you see this profound tension between the ancient and the hypermodern everywhere in the data right now.
It really is a land of paradoxes. For example, look at the new sociological study released this week in our briefs. It shows that Irish Catholics remain among the most practicing in Europe, with incredibly high rates of weekly mass attendance.
Which is really surprising to a lot of people.
Right, because for a country that has modernized and secularized its laws and its public image so aggressively over the last 30 years, that statistic feels almost contradictory. How do those two realities coexist?
Well, it's a brilliant insight into how cultural DNA actually works. Ireland didn't abandon its need for deep communal ritual just because it secularized its laws.
The assumption is usually that modernity erases tradition.
Right. But here, the rhythm of community gathering, the shared ritual, it simply runs parallel to the modern state. The secularization of the government didn't destroy the human need for traditional community practice.
That's a great point.
It's why you have both high mass attendance and this massive, almost religious reverence for modern arts and festival circuits. They're actually fulfilling similar human needs for connection.
That makes total sense. And you see those layers of shared cultural memory interacting in very emotional ways, too. Look at the national reaction this week to the passing of Grain Hui Maitiu, the beloved presenter of the children's TV show Bosco.
Oh, the outpouring was incredible.
Her passing triggered this massive unifying wave of collective nostalgia across generations.
Because for millions of people, she was a foundational architect of their early worldview.
Yeah.
It's a very safe, affectionate kind of shared memory.
But shared memory isn't always safe.
No, it's really not.
In the exact same news cycle, there are active, incredibly heavy discussions happening in Dublin regarding the legacy of the 1916 Rising. You have local tourism boards pushing preparations for the 2026 summer food festivals, actively debating the 7 wonders of Ireland for tourists to visit.
Right, that's the light, easily consumable version of history.
Exactly.
Right.
But right underneath that, society is still wrestling with how to memorialize the armed rebellion that forged the state.
It highlights the dual nature of memory. You have heritage as a packaged tourist attraction, and then you have heritage as a living, breathing, and sometimes very painful debate over who gets to claim the legacy of political violence.
And that tension is a constant feature of the society. Memory is never dormant. Which brings us to a particularly difficult section of our sources today, because this constant wrestling with history isn't just about archaeological anomalies or, academic debates over 1916.
Right.
Sometimes the raw, unhealed nerve of the recent past collides directly with modern media, and the friction is intense.
This is where the concept of contested memory becomes incredibly tangible.
So the sources outline a very recent controversy regarding the use of historical records. Specifically, archival footage from Bloody Sunday has been repurposed in a newly circulated video, and it has sparked massive, immediate debates about memory and history.
It's a very tense situation.
And I want to make sure we just look at the mechanism here without validating either side of the political debate. How does a society effectively move forward when the digital media landscape allows for the instant resurrection and recontextualization of profound trauma? How do you balance the ethical need to remember with the danger of stripping that trauma of its necessary context?
It is arguably the most complex challenge any post-conflict society faces in the digital age. What we're analyzing with this video controversy is the absolute collapse of context. As we discussed with the Roman Pot or the 1916 debates, memory is not a static textbook. It's an active battleground.
But digital media accelerates that battle to light speed.
Exactly. Digital media is inherently designed for instant reaction, for virality, and for brief consumption. But historical trauma requires deep solemnity, nuance, and care.
They're completely opposed forces.
Totally. So when you take visceral, unhealed archival footage of a tragedy and you drag it into the fast-paced, often context-free world of modern digital video, you create an immediate ethical friction. It forces a real-time struggle over ownership.
Over who owns the memory.
Right. Does the footage of a historical tragedy belong to the public domain to be used as a rhetorical tool? Or does it fundamentally belong to the families and the communities who actually live the reality of that day, who bear the scars of it?
It basically commodifies the trauma.
Precisely. When you recontextualize an artifact of trauma in 2026, you aren't just passively looking at the past, you are forcing the past to speak directly to the present, often without the consent of those involved.
Wow.
It stands in such stark contrast to the 7 Wonders tourism campaigns we just talked about. One version of the past is sanitized and packaged for global summer festivals. The other version is raw, unhealed, and when it meets modern media formats, it generates immense heat.
It really pulls the entire scope of this deep dive into sharp focus, doesn't it?
Yes.
When you look at the full picture of the sources we've covered today, Ireland in May 2026 is this incredibly vibrant, sometimes volatile ecosystem. You have a cultural space where tradition meets rebellion head-on, where the veteran acoustic power of Solas and the aggressive punk rap of Kneecap share the exact same festival season.
It's amazing to see.
And then you have massive, strategic, global ambition, with the state pouring millions into exporting its artists to secure its place as a diplomatic and cultural heavyweight.
Which is clearly working.
Yeah. And underneath all of that curation, you have history acting as an unpredictable, living participant in daily life. Whether it's a Roman pot rewriting trade history from a muddy trench, the comforting nostalgia of a childhood TV presenter, or the raw, contested memory of conflict playing out on our digital screens.
It's a society constantly negotiating the space between where it came from and where it is desperately trying to go. And honestly, analyzing all of this leaves you with something really fascinating to think about.
What's that?
Well, we talked extensively about how a simple Roman pot, buried in the dirt for centuries, has the power to completely rewrite what we thought we knew about ancient trade routes today. And we just saw how the digital resurrection of archival video can reignite complex emotional conflicts. It makes you wonder what artifacts from May 2026 will actually survive the test of time.
Oh, that's a wild thought.
Imagine archaeologists 100, 200 years from now digging through our physical and digital sediment.
Oh, well, right. What are they going to find?
Exactly. Maybe they'll uncover a pristine vinyl copy of Kneecap's Fenian album. Or they'll find a fragmented digital file of Joanne Cusack's book analyzing the commercial structures of trad music. Or perhaps they recover a snippet of that U2 Ukrainian collaboration.
Right.
What story will those very specific items tell them about who we were right now? When they analyze their own findings of our era, what will they determine was the actual driving force of our society?
That is an incredible thought to leave on. We are actively building the archaeological record of the future right now, aren't we? Just one song, one policy decision, and one debate at a time. Keep looking closely at the culture around you, keep asking the difficult questions, and we'll catch you next time as we continue to explore the layers beneath the headlines.
That's it for this episode of My Irish Radio, Music and Culture News. Thanks for joining us. And remember, you can hear the best in Irish and Celtic music 24 hours a day at myirishradio.com. If you ever dreamed of sharing your favorite tunes and stories, now's your chance. Become one of the hosts. Host your own show right here on My Irish Radio. Just send us an email. It's easy as that. myirishradio@gmail.com. Until next time, it's Jamie Flanagan. Keep the music playing and keep Ireland in your heart.